Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here to a different kind of video for you guys today, so feedback is greatly appreciated. Please tell me if you enjoyed this video, or please tell me if you do hate it. I have a lot of new fans right now, so I'm kind of getting a gauge as to what's going on, and I want to know what to do with my channel moving forward. So today we're going to be looking at Water Shuriken, because when Greninja uses it and then transforms into Ash-Greninja, apparently Water Shuriken gets a buff. That's what it says about the Battle Bond ability, but when you check it out in game, it doesn't really show anything that your Water Shuriken still has 15 base power when you are transformed in Ash-Greninja, and there is no noticeable difference that I saw, and as far as I'm aware, there's nothing from the data miners either, so what is the buff? I'm looking at damage calculations, and that's what this video is about. So it's more going to be a very technical, over-analyzing, damage calculating, kind of theory crafting guess kind of video. So it's going to be like just a lot of talking and a lot of things on screen. If you guys aren't down for that, please leave that feedback. I would say similar videos to ones I've done in the past would be the Togekiss one. I did a video doing like several hundred flinch tests to see if King's Rock did affect Togekiss's flinch under Serene Grace with Air Slash. It doesn't, and that's what everything kind of said, but I wanted to double check and do like a myth busting thing for it. So it is confirmed on that side, but also in other videos like my Gourgeist video, that one of the first videos I did on this channel was looking at Gourgeist and seeing if it got stockpile before its official moveset was revealed. That when the game first comes out, we don't know all the moves, or at least they haven't been published online yet. So I did some testing like that, and that's kind of the idea of this video. We'll know what the Battle Bond buff is in a couple months when the game comes out, but do you guys want to see any kind of like on-the-ground, hands-on field work before the information is known, or do you just say, I can wait the couple days and then have the real information come out? So is this video a waste of time? Is it not? Either way, let's go into this. So what I did was screw up quite a bit, because I didn't really care about this idea. I wasn't thinking like, oh, how are we going to test this Battle Bond thing? So the only evidence I really have is this one time when I transformed to Ash-Greninja and I used Water Shuriken on a Yungoos in my demo playthrough. Now here's the problem, that you only get Ash-Greninja a few times throughout the demo because it's only during trainer battles, that once you faint a wild Pokemon, you don't transform because there's nothing else to battle. Now, what I then did was I went out and I countered as many Yungoos as possible, and I threw Water Shuriken at them until one of them was only hit twice, survived, and was captured. So this is like getting very specific right now, but the reason why I did that is because now we know this Yungoos' speed. We have the special defense, we have the hit point stat, which means now we can also compare it to the other Yungoos that I fought. So after 2 hits, my opponent's Yungoos at level 38 took pretty much the same percentage level of damage. It's just a couple pixels off, and as you can see right here, it's not really too much, so we can try to figure this one out, which is now why we're heading into a damage calculator slash stat checkers slash all kinds of stuff like that. And now here's where things get boring, or interesting depending on how you roll. So I went and hooked up my Yungoos, and apparently my Yungoos has 5 IVs in hit points and then 20 IVs in the special defense, and it had 31% of its remaining hit points, but we can use that to figure out the rough remaining hit point percentage of the opposing Yungoos. Greninja is also going to be the regular Greninja, 128 EVs in its special attack and max IVs in its special attack as well. So that's all good, and now that we can go and check out how much damage I did, it was roughly 69% of my Yungoos, which was 2 low damage rolls, and now all we have to do is transfer that over into the other Yungoos that my opponent had. Now you might notice it does say Eevee. That doesn't really change anything, it's just a random normal type placeholder Pokemon, and then I did change around the stats because we do know from the demo and the data mine that it has 48 base hit points and then 30 on the special defense. So after doing a little bit of working around and stuff, we don't know the EVs of trainer Pokemon in the demo. We don't even know if they have like good IVs or something, so I just went down the middle. Alright, 16 IVs in hit points, 16 IVs in special defense, and then roughly 34% remaining hit points, judging off of what we saw. Now, interestingly enough, there was a bit of a discrepancy, so it could also be 35% hit points, and we can see that when talking about Ash-Greninja. So another thing I had to make sure is that I was Ash-Greninja when I damaged this Yungoos. So Water Shuriken will do more damage, but that doesn't mean it's stronger because Ash-Greninja gains 50 points in its special attack. So we do need to factor that in, and after doing so, the damage roll was kind of interesting, so it either had 33 or 35% of its remaining health, and that's where things started to get kind of complicated. So it shows right here that Water Shuriken would do 64.5% of this Pokemon's max health, so rounded up to 65%, which means for there to be any buff to Water Shuriken, the minimum damage would be higher than the damage that the opposing Yungoos took. So it just shows that either I did something really wrong, or Water Shuriken doesn't get really much of a buff, and that I also had to get very unlucky and get 2 of the lowest damage rolls possible. So the odds of all this happening were pretty low and unfortunate, so maybe they have max IVs in hit points and special defense, which would change around a couple of stats, but it doesn't really imply that Water Shuriken gets a direct damage buff. So I went on Twitter and asked, what happens, does Water Shuriken hit 5 times? Does it get like skill linked once Greninja becomes Ash-Greninja? And no, people are saying first Shuriken hit 3 times, and it just kind of looks like that on the damage. So now we have to do damage calculations based off of Hack-Mo-Oh, because I couldn't figure it out, and I asked on Twitter if people would give me some stuff. So from the demo data mine, we know that Hack-Mo-Oh has 55 base hit points and 70 base on that special defense, and after doing all the damage calculation stuff once again, it shows 12.5% to 18.7% of Hack-Mo-Oh's health taken from that Water Shuriken, because it's going to resist it pretty well. Also, it does get a buff that says Hack-Mo-Oh's special defense raises, because that's how it works with the Totem Pokemon, and that's the only way that you can get the Ash-Greninja against the Totem Pokemon. So after that buff and stuff, not really taking too much damage, and what we can do is we can also use that picture to roughly find out how much health the Hack-Mo-Oh had remaining. So what I did was I wanted to take that Yungoos. We know that Yungoos had a certain amount of hit points left, so I tried to flip it and make it fit, and after just some rough approximations and trying to figure out some numbers, it seems like that Hack-Mo-Oh had taken roughly 28% of its health. And this is another interesting discrepancy, because it showed that the damage on that Water Shuriken was supposed to be somewhere around 12 to 18%. Okay, so now we're getting somewhere, but that's also not really consistent with what I did. So now I had to go and try to look deeper into this, and I started changing around with Water Shuriken and how much damage it could potentially do. Because say Water Shuriken gets a 30% damage buff when you are in Ash-Greninja. That means it's going to have 20 power, and it's going to hit 3 times, like said in the tweet that I received. So that puts Water Shuriken's damage at 23 to 29% against a Hack-Mo-Oh that has interesting, you know, roughly 15 IVs in hit points and special defense. So unless they have like 0 IVs in the demo, that would change up some of the stats, but it can work. So that means I had to get really low damage rolls on the Yungoos I battled, and then the person that sent me the tweet also got really high damage rolls against the Hack-Mo-Oh. So what does this all mean? It means I screwed up somewhere along the lines, or that Water Shuriken actually gets a damage buff, but it doesn't like apply to the base power, and it could realistically be about 30 to 50%, because it's not going to be that noticeable of a difference. It's going to be 20 or 22 base power after that boost, and it seems like 30% is the closest number, just going off of what happened with the Yungoos and what happened with the Hack-Mo-Oh. Could be 50%, and that's what this video was about. So the results are inconclusive, and that's another reason why I want to see if you guys love this video or hate it. Do you feel like I wasted your time, since we don't really know, but at the same time it's still realistic that there was a base damage buff to it, and that's, now we get to think about this competitively. Like, the reason why I want to do this was from the competitive standpoint. If we're thinking about damage calculations, if we're thinking about a potential moveset for Ash-Greninja, we need to know the base power of Water Shuriken and if it's going to be usable, because 15 base power isn't that fantastic, but at 20 base power, that actually changes a lot of things, because that means at minimum, it's going to be effectively like a Shadow Sneak, like any other priority move. You know, Bullet Punch has 40 base power, and Water Shuriken is going to hit at least 2 times. So that means we have a 40 base power, and then at 5 hits, we're going to be having a 100 base power priority move, which is also at the same time why it feels like even a 30% buff to Water Shuriken after also giving a 50 base stat buff to Ash-Greninja is a little absurd. So I'm really interested to figure out what this actual buff is with the Battle Bond to Water Shuriken, because that means it can do as much or more damage than a Scald under priority with all of that crazy boosting and stuff, and then Dark Pulse and Hydro Pump still work really well on the Greninja. So that is all there is to the video. So if I got something wrong, please comment down below. Like, I want to just know what this damage buff is, or also if the data miners came out with the information. I don't know if that was like really fancy information for people to dig in and figure out, but at the same time, something needs to happen. Like, the flavor text of Battle Bond says that the power of Water Shuriken does increase, and we don't see like a straight up numbers increase. It was like some kind of arbitrary percentage that may or may not have happened depending on how good or bad my numbers are. Because like, what if the like trainers actually have EVs and IVs for their Pokemon, but the wild and Pokemon encounters don't? So that means maybe the Yungoos was meant to take less damage from that trainer, so that would be on point with actual Water Shuriken getting a buff, and then the Hakamo still also being pretty favorable on the buff. It has like max IVs or something, because it is a part of the story. Or if there was like some blatant math error. I know that I didn't provide a lot of pictures, because I just wanted to kind of grind out the numbers, but I think my damage calculation and my logic was pretty sound, and that's the video. That's why I mean, like, if you guys hated this, I'd understand why. I hope you don't feel like I wasted your time at all, because the conclusion is inconclusive, but also potentially a 30% buff, which is pretty interesting to think about. That's kind of what I want to do with these videos. We'll eventually have the answer, especially once the game comes out. There'll be like a little thing that says, oh, by the way, it also buffs Water Shuriken by 30% damage. Because if it's 50% seems too high, but it's also still a realistic possibility, especially if it does get more powerful. So that's something to consider. I'm just really interested in these things, which is why I will go do out the research and maybe make an interesting video about it. So if you guys enjoy the video, I hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.